Let me ruin your reality real quick. You know why old pictures made black people look gray or ashy or like they're standing in the dark? Because cameras weren't built to see us. Literally, Kodak built film that was color balanced to white skin. And the way they did it was something called the Shirley card. So back in the 50s, Kodak picked this one white woman named Shirley to be the face of all color film. Labs around the world got these Shirley cards. A white woman in perfect lighting smiling in a studio. That was the standard. The industry calibrated the entire concept of color to one white woman's skin tone. So when you brought in your family photos, your black, brown, or mixed skin faces, the machines didn't know what to do. It would try to make you look like Shirley. And if you look like me, there's no way you're looking like Shirley. But of course, when it couldn't, it just dimmed you out. That's why your grandparents' photos look like they were taken on the dark side of the moon. And of course, the excuse was like, it's not racist, it's just technical. But you don't accidentally design an entire technology around whiteness. That's a choice. They didn't build cameras that couldn't see black people. They built cameras that didn't need to. Because who were they photographing, right? White families, white weddings, white ads. Black faces didn't exist to them unless it was for a mugshot or a headline. We were never the audience, we were always the backdrop. But here's the part that's gonna make your blood boil. Right, because Kodak didn't fix this for us. They fixed it because chocolate factories and furniture makers complained, saying that their ads looked bad. Dark wood and dark chocolate were hard to capture on camera, so they literally improved color film to make products look good, not the people. We weren't even seen as worth adjusting for until companies started losing money. Capitalism said, we can't see black folks, and Kodak said, yeah, okay, that's fine. But when capitalism said we can't sell chocolate, Kodak said, oh my God, we must do something. Oh, I swear you can't make this up. It wasn't until the 1990s, yes, the 1990s, that Kodak released multiracial Shirley cards. Not because they suddenly grew a conscience, but because they couldn't sell film in Africa, the Caribbean, or South America anymore. You can't market whiteness in a world that is literally full of color. So they added some brown faces, patted themselves on the back, and called it progress. Like decades of erasure could be fixed with a rebrand. So yeah, next time you look at those old pictures and wonder why your grandma looks invisible, remember that she wasn't. It was just the film that refused to see her. Because it wasn't bad lighting, it wasn't an accident, it was designed. A camera calibrated to whiteness. A world built to pretend that only Shirley mattered. And the wildest part, people still act like that was just a glitch in the system. But nah, that was the system.
Interesting. You know, I never knew anything about the Shirley card. You know, I'm not a photographer, I'm not a videographer anyways, but I never knew that. So history is always so intriguing to me because it tells a lot of stories. And I think this is my hot take for this video. I think we need to become comfortable with history, because the more we become comfortable, not just American history, but since this is about American history, we're going to stick with that. History in general, right? But specifically American history to speak to this video. I believe it helps us understand what we see today. I was telling somebody probably like a week or two ago, and this has been my thing with podcasts. I know a lot of people get irritated. Everybody got a podcast, and but the one thing I've enjoyed about podcasts is it really allows someone to tell a story, to go back in time and tell about their history or the history of something, because as you share history, it makes the present day make more sense. It does. And American history is really bloody, and a lot of times people are uncomfortable talking about it because of, for whatever, it's various reasons people feel uncomfortable talking about it. But I believe when we talk about it from a place of wanting to be better than we were in our past as a nation and as people, I think it's good to have that conversation, because it could help us avoid the violence and the offense and the hate and the racism that existed during that time and that still exists today. A lot of times we don't like to speak to it because it's an uncomfortable conversation. We like to focus on, well, we've had a black president, we're more diverse than we ever before, laws have changed, and I thank God for that. I thank God that I don't have to be out protesting and, people are spraying me with water and K9ers are out there and, just violence, can't get on a bus and, because of racial issues. I'm grateful for that, right? But at the same time, I understand and I recognize that that's uncomfortable because for a lot of people, because they don't want to accept a lot of what is going on today is because of history. And that's and you have to be patient. Like when you're talking about history here in America, when you're talking about the things that were done, like trying to throw stats at it, trying to throw politics at it, policies, trying to throw victories at it, like, oh, we've had a black president, black vice president, like trying to throw things like that at it really defeats the purpose of even talking about history because it's not telling the story. Well, I'm not gonna say it defeats the purpose, but trying to talk about it in a way as like, oh, this doesn't exist anymore because these things happen, is really like a slap in the face because we still have people, I see it online, like people using the N-word, like of one race, using it to another race, like whites using it against blacks to literally, it's almost like this is the last hoorah. I'm gonna hit you with this because I know it's gonna hurt. I've literally observed this and I've seen it online. That alone says, listen, history is, what's happened in our history is still affecting us, it's still plaguing us. And to even expand the conversation a little bit more, it has a lot to do with sin. And I thank God for the slave abolitionists who, began to see us as image bearers, because it's just so much history around, we weren't even considered humans. So I think when we to get back to the Shirley card, the camera and all that, when you go through history and you're reading something like that, it explains it because they really didn't consider us humans. So why would they create a Shirley card to capture us? Well, there was an oppressive history, a violent history, an outright evil history that was happening. So it's not a surprise, but history tells us that. It tells us that, and that's why I believe it's important to have history. I think it makes us more comfortable with these conversations, especially when we're not seeking to weaponize, but rather to get an understanding of how we can elude being that type of nation, those type of people, and unify, and essentially just be the creation that God made us to be. And I know I'm intertwining faith, history, and camera history, but I hope I'm making sense to you. History is important because it teaches us, it shows us where we were back then and how we got to where we are and why. It's like where, why, when, how, and what. Like that's what history does for us. So hearing this, it's an interesting part of history, and I'm grateful that the cameras have evolved. And she said, oh, it didn't evolve because they thought like, oh, black people are humans made in the image of God, beautiful people. No, it was like, oh, we can't capture dark wood, we can't capture dark chocolate, so we're gonna have to change it. But eventually they did because it was an opportunity to make more money, and we thank God for that. However, it's still important to recognize that there's a reason why these things exist, the challenges we have today, and that's because of history. It's because there's also this like sweep that under the rug kind of mentality. And to me, I look at that like a relationship or a marriage. If you do something and you're unfaithful to your spouse and you're like, that's in the past, let's sweep that under the rug. I've been paying a mortgage, I got you a new car, I got us a new home, like all these things to try to make it seem like, oh, that wasn't that serious. That's not gonna work. So the same thing, like with history, a lot of things happen. We shouldn't sweep it under the rug. It's actually more of a path for us to look back and say, we can learn from this. Even in the Bible, it talks about, I think it's in 1 Corinthians 10. Don't get me to lying. Let me reference it real quick. I think it's 1 Corinthians 10, to where Paul is saying that there are certain things that we could learn from the Israelites in their journey. You know, it's like those things were recorded for our instruction of how to be better followers of Christ and walk out our faith and walk out our obedience. I'm gonna find it really quick. I think it's 1 Corinthians 10. I'm not sure. Yeah. It's 1 Corinthians 10. Let me find the verse. 1 Corinthians 10 verse 11. It says, these things happened to them as examples, and they were written for our instruction, on whom the end of the ages have come. And he's telling us because he's giving warnings about different things. And I'll just speak to it more practically. Like that's what history is for, is to warn us of what not to do, what to do, where not to go, where to go, what not to say, what to say. And I hope that even from something as simple as a history lesson on the evolving of a camera and portraits and capturing, all people, I hope that you can see from that there's a purpose in history. The purpose is to, not just to point us to Jesus, right? Yeah, it should, for us to cry out Abba, for us to see a lot of the things we're facing is at the root sin. But secondly, on a practical level, is for us to say, how can we learn from that? How can we be better? Not to weaponize it against one another, not to even weaponize it against those who came before us, but to call it what it was. It was evil, it was wrong, and then to push back against those type of frameworks and ideas from establishing itself today. There's so much that could be said, but I think that's all I'm going to say about that. As I always say, you can follow us on all platforms. We're on TikTok. Obviously, we're on YouTube. We're on Instagram as There's Hope Brand, on all platforms. Even check us out on the website, www.there'shopebrand.com. I'll make sure that's put into the video as well. And what was I going to say? That's about it. I'll make sure I link the video in the description. So if you want to go check out the original creator's work and that video itself, it'll be in the description. That's all I got to say about that. I'll catch y'all in the next video.